Our next session, we have a talk by Ashutosh Kulkarni. Ashutosh is the CEO of a company called Elastic. And he's gonna kick off right after the break. So Ashutosh, welcome. Yeah, this is like the bewitching hour, right? Like I'm between you and lunch. So hopefully, oh, you can't hear me. All right. This is perfect. Can everybody hear me now? All right, great. My voice usually carries, but this is a big room. So hopefully everybody had enough caffeine because we are leading up to lunch. But look, here's the thing. I'm going to break the trend. Everybody that was here earlier just talked without the use of slides. So I figured I'm going to mess this up for you by actually showing slides. So this is the first of my 84 slides. But just bear with me through all of this. So I'm Ashutosh. I work for a company called Elastic. And we are known for the technology that we've built over the years, something called Elasticsearch. And Elasticsearch is quite widely used. And it started in open source. And through that, we've seen some amazing success in adoption. And when I talk about AI, I like to talk about not just what we're doing in the space of AI, which almost everybody here, if you're here today, it's because you're doing something in the space of AI. But for me, a passion is how can AI solve some of the problems that I actually see in our day-to-day lives? I was sitting in the panel about healthcare, and I thought it was an amazing panel. But there's more mundane stuff that AI can also help us with, things that I feel we tend to neglect because capitalism does such a wonderful job of chasing the biggest opportunities when it comes to money that it often ignores the smaller problems that can make our lives better. So let me talk a little bit about generative AI because I feel that it is generally good. And we all started actually paying attention to this, except for Ramesh, who apparently has been paying attention to this for the last 50 years. For those of you who sat through a session today morning, it was fantastic. But this really became popular and caught everybody's imagination about a year and a half ago when ChatGPT first came out. I got scared when my son started using it for attempting his classwork. He was then in 5th grade, which he's a hustler. In Bombay, I grew up in Mumbai. Jugaadi, like he's all about jugaad. Like how do you find the fastest path? But this was exciting because you could see the potential quite early. And then this happened. How many of you know the story? What was interesting was I was actually looking up this article as I was trying to put together the slides for this, just for visual aids. And the story here is there was a lawyer who was representing a client who was trying to sue an airline. And he went to ChatGPT thinking that ChatGPT was actually going to give him accurate information. And he presented the case with a lot of confidence, only to realize that a lot of the cases that had been cited were absolutely made up. Now, here's the fascinating thing. This made a lot of news. This is taken from the New York Times. As I was looking for this article, I did a search to see, oh, what was that article again? And it showed up at least 8 other similar incidences. So what's fascinating is we human beings don't seem to learn from each other's mistake. We prefer to make it ourselves first. At least there were 8 others who tried to make the same mistake and didn't quite get it. But it was clear when this happened that these inference models, as amazing as they are at predicting the next word and the word after that, and constructing whole chunks of language or image or whatever it might be, audio, they hallucinate. They don't always have the factual information. And it makes a lot of sense. It does not have access to any of your proprietary data. It does not always have access to all the information that might be relevant to a particular question, a particular prompt. And so it makes stuff up. It's really good at that. In that sense, it's kind of like my 5th grader. Now he's in 6th grade. And that's what led to this area called retrieval augmented generation. This is, RAG. is a term that if you are in this space, you've probably already heard. If not, you'll hear about it soon. And that was the company that I work for, Elastic. We got really involved because we'd been building something called a vector search or a vector database for about the last 4.5 years. We didn't fully anticipate what the use cases would be when we started on that journey, but when large language models came about, like we were in the right place at the right time. But the idea here is very simple. The idea is to effectively ground what a large language model can do by telling that large language model answer based on this context. And the context comes from, in real time, quickly searching through your corpus of information, whatever that data might be, and providing that to the large language model to say, here, answer based on this. And it works incredibly well. There are other techniques to do similar things like fine-tuning of models and so on, but your data is constantly evolving. So RAG has become kind of the de facto, because it's the only way you get absolute real-time information related to your context and your systems. And this has been fantastic. It unlocked a whole bunch of areas of use, not just for consumer purposes, but within the enterprise. And we started seeing a tremendous amount of uptake for these kinds of AI-related use cases. Elasticsearch has been downloaded for over 5 billion times in our history. So there are a lot of people out there who use Elasticsearch, and there's a lot of data on Elasticsearch. So as you can imagine, we started getting into this, and we started getting into all kinds of areas where RAG and AI might be relevant in the enterprise. And when I think about what RAG has done for the enterprise, I'll give you an analogy on this. Does everybody remember the "I'm feeling lucky" button on Google? It basically just takes you to the first link, right? Instead of giving you the list. That quote, if you don't know what that quote is, I'm a big Clint Eastwood Dirty Harry fan, so look it up. You know what it is about. But it's like you're always feeling lucky. That's really what RAG is trying to do, right? It's giving you a curated answer. It's not giving you a list of potential options. It's telling you, here you go. And in that sense, like my big takeaway from it, when I was really thinking about what is this pattern? What does AI really have the ability to do? It's giving you the chance to give a specific answer in a domain where specific answers were really hard to get. And you can make that specific answer as good as possible. It's like you're feeling lucky all the time. And the space, and Ramesh made this point earlier today, it's moving at such a breakneck speed. Since the last year and a half, when ChatGPT became popular, you have seen so much development in the research area around open source models. From my experience, anything in open source accelerates development in that space faster than any proprietary technology can. Because when you put stuff in open source, like it's my belief, and people might disagree with this, if it weren't for something like Linux, you would not have had cloud computing today. I mean, I can't imagine if all the operating systems were HP UX and Solaris and Microsoft Windows, that there would have been enough investment and enough scale and enough choice that you would have seen the emergence of cloud computing. Open source unlocks markets like nothing else because it has a democratizing effect. And that's what's happening with models. The same thing is happening in the multimodal space. We as human beings, 5 senses, right? So we see things, we hear things, we read things. There are so many different ways in which we interpret data and information. Multimodal is super important. There's so much that's happening in this space. The last area is the price of inferencing is dropping at an alarmingly awesome rate. It's a good thing because the pace at which this becomes democratized, the greater the chance that you're going to have these systems running on your phone, running on small devices, we will be pushing AI technology to the edge. It won't be limited to your data centers or cloud data centers. That's fascinating. And so the use cases that I have seen that really excite me, and I'll talk about, I'll end with why I feel there's goodness in this. Who knows what that thing on the left is, to your left? What is it called? It's a compound miter saw. There are multiple forms of miter saw, but you get an award just for knowing that it's a miter saw. You're like, how many of you actually know that there is this thing called a compound miter saw? Like, apart from you, my friend. You, there you go. It's like, there's an audience of several, 100 plus people, and there are 2 people who know what that is called. Now imagine being able to take a picture, and we have a customer that's doing this now. Taking a picture, and people have talked about, reverse image search for a while, but this is pretty cool. Now it's possible. In the past, you could take a picture of a barcode and search for it. Now you can take a picture of an object and search for it. What's even more interesting is one of our customers in India, an e-commerce company, Meesho. I don't know if many of you know about Meesho, but they're trying to do this this other use case where if you want to shop and you don't know how to describe what you're looking for, you can just take an image of your favorite star, whether it's Virat or whoever else, and say, oh, I want to look for this. I want to shop for this. And it can pull up all the kurtas and wedding sherwanis and so on, just based on that image, just based on that reverse image search. That's a really powerful application. Think of all the ways in which people today feel challenged describing what it is that they're looking for. If you can solve that problem by incorporating visual information, that's really powerful. There is a democratizing effect of this that is pretty amazing. In healthcare, take pictures of whatever rash you might be looking at, send that over. Use that to analyze whatever information you need to analyze from that image. Another very interesting use case that I've seen, this is a very large bank. And one of my passion areas is financial literacy for individuals. Starting with kids, but we live in a bubble here. Most of us here are incredibly financially sophisticated. But you go outside of our bubble, the country isn't like this. You don't represent the country, believe it or not. There are a lot of people who struggle with basic financial decisions. This customer is creating basically a chatbot, for lack of a better word, but think of it as a customized Bloomberg feed for their high net worth and ultra high net worth customers. It's a wealth management group within one of the top 10 banks. And what they've done is, they've built this application that can take information about your portfolio, about everything related to you and macro things that are happening that could affect your portfolio. And they bring it together to give you very specific alerts, very specific information. That's great. It's wonderful if you're a billionaire that you have access to that. But guess what? There's no reason why that same technology can't be used for retail customers. And their whole vision is that at some point of time, they'll open this up to their retail customers. To me, that's amazing. If you can bring financial literacy to people who don't have the same wherewithal as the folks in this room, that is a really good thing. And the last use case I'll talk about is citizen services. The government of Australia has been using our technology for some of this. They find that certain parts of Australia where citizens who are looking for information for citizen services of any kind, it might be related to government services around healthcare or transportation or whatever, they don't have the ability to use the applications as well as others. Being able to do that conversationally is a big deal for them. And Ramesh was talking about it earlier in the morning as well. I think there is massive disruption and improvement that's going to happen in all of these areas. And so for me, the question is, this group here that's represented from the Indian diaspora, what is it that we can create, not just for our family members and our relatives and others in India, but even here in the US? because financial literacy is just as important here in the US as it is in India and in other parts of the world. And capitalism can also take advantage of what that means in terms of creating markets while also doing good. So I genuinely believe that generative AI has pretty amazing potential, let alone the broader field of AI, because generative AI is just a small fragment of what AI is all about. But that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Happy to take any questions, but other than that, hopefully the 84 slides went too fast. Okay. Thank you. Hey, thanks, Ash. Appreciate it. Oh, there's one question. Sorry. Yeah. That latter question is incredibly hard. Now, I have to say that, I feel more, I feel more optimistic because these days, so we get the opportunity to interact with folks in government on that topic of regulation, not probably as much as some of the LLM developers do, but we do get called in to talk about AI ethics and how are we thinking about regulations around AI, what are our recommendations and suggestions as Congress and others are sort of thinking about this. To me, the optimism comes from the fact that the questions that are being asked are more intelligent than the questions that I saw being asked on C-SPAN 10 years ago, when the internet was being born, and it just felt like everybody there was a deer in the headlights. Things have improved, which is good. So, like Ro Khanna, I don't know if you know Ro, but he's incredibly tech savvy, right? So you have a lot of congressmen now who are helping lead the way. I'm a big believer that being able to track the provenance of data is going to be very important, because one of the things in AI is it's your models and everything that you do is only going to be as good as the data that was used to train it, to refine it, to retrieve context from it. And if you don't have a good way of being able to show provenance, you could disrupt, and not in a positive way. You could disrupt in a very negative way a whole bunch of industries, a whole bunch of appropriate setups. Like, imagine if tomorrow the New York Times is completely obliterated because nobody subscribes to the New York Times anymore because everybody is getting their information from chatbots. That could be a real problem. I can see that happening. So actually, I'm a big fan of some of the stuff that Adobe is doing in this area. And there are companies that are trying to be ahead of it. I hope people don't plug inference models and other AI systems to our defense nuclear silos just yet. But I think common sense regulation is going to rule the day. But as long as we can connect the data to where it started from, so we can appropriately compensate people and so on, that's about it. I think we just need to be mindful and thoughtful, and also appreciate the fact that if we enforce regulation, it doesn't mean that other countries that might not agree with us will necessarily enforce those same regulations. The Chinese government is going to do things its own way. So we don't want to, I'm not a believer in stifling innovation with too much regulation. That can have its own negative effects. Thanks, Ash. Thank you.